Okay, side control submissions. So basic submissions from the top game here. Americana, your Kimura, and your Japanese armbar are the most common. There's others, but we're going to start there. So you got your partner here in side control. And, once you know all your side control fundamentals, keeping your knees to elbows and keeping the pin, being able to control him and continuously pin him is the first and foremost important thing. Once you understand that really well, he starts to defend here. He's going to look for a frame, right? When he starts looking for a frame here, I can start using that to get control of his arm here. So, any way you can, you're going to look to use your head even to push the arm down here. My hand underneath here is grabbing his wrist control. My hand under his neck is grabbing his wrist. I'm going to pin his arm to the ground. Okay, keeping my elbows on the ground, and then I'm going to unloop his head here. Notice I'm controlling his elbow here. So if he tries to pull his elbow to his ribs here, he's blocked. If he tries to pull his elbow in towards his face, he's blocked. And at the same time, I'm controlling his wrist. So I've got my elbows pulling in on him here. Isolated elbow, isolated wrist. He's in a really, really bad spot. They're going to be bucking and squirming in here at this point because they know they're in a bad spot, and usually as they do, they're going to open up a hole, right? So as he bucks and squirms, see that? I'm just going to wait for that and slide that thing in. So I'm grabbing deep grips here, double wrist control. I want my knuckle line over the outside line of my arm. So knuckles deep, we don't want shallow knuckle grips. Okay, knuckles deep on both hands. This one's deep too. What shallow knuckle grips would be here and here. These are terrible grips, no good. We want monkey grips first. So all 5 fingers on the outside. My knuckles are over the far line of his arm. So we call it motorcycle grips also. Also, these knuckles, far side of my arm. I'm going to pull his elbow in towards his ribs, and it starts to hook up the submission. You can also pull his elbow in while it's flat, and then start to torque the motorcycle grips, and that gets him too. Sorry, Kenny. Okay, so the basic Americana from side control here. We're here in a cross face, and more often than not, let's go over the correct way to cross face here, Kenny. Kenny wants to punch it. If I'm driving with my shoulder tight here, first off, Kenny wants to make relieve pressure on my shoulder. Pull, yeah. Then he can slide his hand underneath my chin and start to make his frames here. That's the correct way to do it. However, many people, once they feel this pressure on the chin, they'll start to freak out, and he starts to run his hand across my forehead here. That's a different thing. So I'm going to use my forehead to pin his elbow, pin his wrist, unwrap him here, punch my elbow down right tight against his neck, controlling the elbow and wrist, and then I can come underneath. If he doesn't buck here, I'm just going to crawl my fingers underneath and get to the deep double wrist control. Motorcycle grips, pull his elbow in tight, you get the finish. If they're very flexible, if they're yoga types, I'm gonna modify my grips and let them loose here so we can get more flexibility in his arm. We're gonna pretend Kenny's a yogi here, and I can bring his elbow all the way in. I want my elbow tight against his hip here, and then I'm gonna pin his wrist to the ground and slowly start lifting his elbow while his wrist is pinned. And that's a way to isolate the arm better if you get someone that's hyper flexible.